RES IT Store Tutorial 6087, Installing the Components of the RES IT Store. The RES IT Store installer is a single executable that contains all the MSI files for the components of the RES IT Store. The IT Store installer supports both 32 and 64-bit systems. The installer allows you to select which components to install on your computer. The installation wizard for each component will then assist you in the installation. Now let's open the RES IT Store installer from our desktop. Select Next. Optionally, you can extract the MSI files for the components of the RES IT Store from the installer to perform unintended installations of these components. This tutorial only covers the manual installation of the components. Please refer to the IT Store 2014 Administration Guide for more information on unintended installations.
RES Software recommends to install the components of the IT Store in the following order: IT Store Console, IT Store Transaction Engine, IT Store Catalog Services, IT Store Web Portal. First, let's select the IT Store Console as the only component to install. Click Next and click Install. From the wizard, select Next, accept the license agreement, click Next. We're going to install in the default location. Click Next and Install. At the end of the setup wizard, when you select Launch IT Store or Console, the console will launch automatically when you click Finished. Click Close on the installer. When the console opens, you'll be prompted to create a new data store if one does not exist. Click Yes to start the wizard. In the wizard, click Next and select the type of database server to which you want to connect. For example, Microsoft SQL Server. Specify the name of the relevant database server. When using Microsoft SQL Server, RES Automation Manager will automatically show a list of available SQL servers. Specify the SQL authentication. Specify the username and password of the DBA account that has access to the database. Click Next to specify a name for the data store. Click Next. If necessary, change the database settings. Click Next. Create a login account that uses the console to access the new data store. Click Next. Review your settings, and then click Create to create the data store. After the data store has been created, the console will restart automatically and connect to the new data store. To verify that you're connecting to the newly created data store, click Setup in the console, Data Store. You can see the settings that we just created in the wizard. Click Close, and let's move on to install the transaction engine. With the IT Store installer open, click Next, click Next. Uncheck all settings except for the transaction engine. To install the transaction engine, the computer account of the computer on which you want to install the transaction engine must be added to the Active Directory security group that has been granted DB owner rights to the data store. After installation of the transaction engine, this account can be removed from the DB owner rights. Click Next and Install. The wizard will start. Click Next, accept the license agreement. Click Next. We'll install in default location. Click Next and Install. When prompted, provide the connection settings to the data store. If the transaction engine is installed on the same computer as the console, the connection settings are automatically enumerated. You can select the Test button to confirm the connection to the data store. Click OK to close. Click Finish to close the installer. Now let's move on to installing the catalog services. On the IT Store installer, select Next, and next again. Ensure only catalog service features will be installed. With the transaction engine, to install the catalog services, the computer account on the computer which you are about to install the catalog services must have the security group DB owner rights to the data store. Click Next and Install to begin the wizard. Select Next from the wizard. Accept the license agreement. Click Next, and we'll install in the default location. Click Next and install. The catalog services are installed on the same computer as the console. The connection settings are automatically enumerated. Otherwise, manually enter the settings to the data store. Select the test button to confirm you can connect to the data store. Click OK, and OK to close the dialog. And click Finish to exit the installer. Now let's take a look at installing the RES IT Store web portal. Next in the installer, and next again. Select only the RES IT Store web portal as a feature to install, and select Next. Install to launch the portal wizard. Click Next. Accept the license agreement. Select Next. We're going to install in the default location. Select Next. In the Configure IIS binding step, specify whether the RES IT Store web portal will be the default website. This can be useful if the server on which you are installing the RES IT Store web portal hosts more than one website that all share the same IP address. If the RES IT Store web portal will not be the default website, you have to provide different binding settings. Select Yes. This will install the RES IT Store web portal using the default settings. In the catalog service steps, specify the client connection settings for the catalog services. The host name specifies the computer on which the catalog services is installed. You can use either its fully qualified domain name or its IP address. The catalog services do not require a password by default. Should you have specified a password in the console, please use that password. Select Next. In the default domain configuration step, specify the domain name that is used for automatic authentication for users. After the first time they log on, users no longer need to specify their logon credentials, but can access the RES IT Store web portal directly. Select Next and install. Select Close to close the RES IT Store setup wizard. This concludes this RES IT Store tutorial. For additional information on RES IT Store and RES IT Suite, please visit www.ressoftware.com.